They say grief brings families together. They're wrong. At my husband's funeral, before his casket had even been lowered, my stepdaughter leaned over and whispered, "Enjoy the next 2 weeks. That's how long it'll take us to get you out of this house." I didn't answer. I just watched the rain hit the window and thought about the envelope sitting in my safety deposit box, the one Robert had asked me to keep for exactly a day like this one. My name is Diane Foster. I was 41 when I married Robert Allison, a man 12 years older than me with 2 grown children who never once said my name without a slight curl of their lip. Madison was 26, sharp and ambitious. Tyler was 29, quieter, but no kinder. The kind of quiet that watches and calculates rather than listens. I had been a hospice nurse for 15 years before I met Robert. That's how we met. I was caring for his mother in her final months. He brought me coffee at 2 a.m. and asked questions about her medication. And somewhere between the exhaustion and the grief, we became something more. His children never forgave me for that beginning. She saw dollar signs the moment Dad got lonely. Madison told a cousin at our wedding, not quietly enough. I let it go. I let a lot of things go over the 11 years of our marriage. Love doesn't need to be understood by everyone, just by the 2 people living it. What none of them knew, what I had never told a single soul, was the conversation Robert and I had 3 years before he passed. Sitting in his study with his attorney, the door locked, the blinds drawn, a conversation that would decide, long after his last breath, whether the people who despised me would keep anything at all. That conversation was why, at the funeral, while Madison smiled the tight smile of someone already redecorating my bedroom in her head, I felt nothing but a strange, steady calm. The house Robert left behind sat on 4 acres outside of Millbrook, a sprawling colonial with a wraparound porch he'd restored himself over 3 summers. He used to say the house was the one thing in his life he built entirely with his own hands. No inheritance, no shortcuts, just sweat and Saturdays. It was the house where Madison and Tyler grew up, and it was the house they now believed belonged to them by blood, regardless of what any paperwork said. 2 weeks after the funeral, exactly as Madison had promised, an envelope arrived taped to my front door instead of mailed. Inside was a letter from a lawyer I had never heard of, informing me that as the surviving spouse without documented ownership interest, I had 30 days to vacate the property before a formal eviction process would begin. It was signed by Madison and Tyler both. I read it twice at the kitchen table, where Robert and I had eaten breakfast every morning for over a decade. Then I made myself a cup of coffee and called the only person Robert had trusted with everything. His attorney, Walter Simmons, a man who had known Robert since law school and who had sat in that locked study with us 3 years earlier. "They sent you something, didn't they?" Walter said before I'd even explained. It wasn't a question, an eviction letter. He was quiet for a moment. "Diane, I think it's time we opened the file." I hadn't touched that safety deposit box since the day Robert asked me to keep it. Some part of me had hoped I would never need to, but grief has a way of teaching you that hope is not a strategy. And the people who once smiled at your wedding can turn into strangers who mail you eviction notices before the flowers on a grave have wilted. I told Walter I'd meet him at the bank in the morning. Before I tell you what was in that box, you need to understand what my marriage actually looked like from the inside. Because Madison and Tyler only ever saw the outside, the dinners, the vacations, the assumption that I had married into comfort I hadn't earned. What they never saw was the year Robert's business nearly collapsed. 4 years into our marriage, when a partner embezzled from the company and left Robert facing debts that threatened everything he'd built, including the house. Robert didn't tell his children. He was too proud, too afraid of how it would look. Instead, he told me, at 2 in the morning, sitting on the edge of our bed with his head in his hands. I liquidated the small nest egg I'd saved from 15 years of nursing shifts, night rotations, and holidays spent working instead of celebrating. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to cover the gap during the 6 months it took Robert to restructure the business and recover. I never told Madison or Tyler. Robert asked me not to. He said he didn't want them to see him as anything less than the man who built everything himself. I agreed, because I loved him. And because I understood something about pride that his own children never had to learn. Pride is heaviest for the people who build something out of nothing. What Robert did instead, quietly, was something I didn't fully understand until years later. He didn't just remember what I'd done for him, he documented it. Every transfer, every date, every dollar, notarized and filed with Walter Simmons in a manner so precise it could only have been intentional. He was preparing for something. Even then, some part of him must have known his children's affection for him ran shallower than their affection for what he owned. I just didn't know how deep that documentation went until the morning I sat across from Walter at the bank. The safety deposit box was smaller than I expected, given how much weight it seemed to carry. Walter slid it across the table between us in a quiet back room, and for a moment neither of us reached for it. "Robert came to me 8 years ago," Walter said, "right after you covered the company's shortfall. He said he wanted to make sure that if anything ever happened to him, the truth couldn't be erased just because it was inconvenient for certain people." Inside the box were 3 things. The first was a certified copy of a promissory note, the loan I had given the business, with interest accruing annually, structured as a formal loan rather than a gift, meaning it was a debt the company legally owed me, not a favor Robert's children could dismiss as sentiment. The second was a document I hadn't known existed, a revised trust, executed 5 years ago, that placed the house and a controlling percentage of company shares into a trust with me, named as primary beneficiary during my lifetime, with the remainder passing to Madison and Tyler only after my death or voluntary transfer. The third was a handwritten letter from Robert, dated the same day as the trust. Walter let me read it alone. "Diane," it began, "if you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and it likely means my children have shown you who they really are when they think no one else is watching. I built this house with my hands, but I kept it standing with your money and your silence, and I will not let anyone forget that, even if I'm not here to say it myself. Protect yourself. You've earned every inch of it." I sat in that small room for a long time after finishing the letter. Not because I was overwhelmed, but because for the first time since the funeral, I felt something other than calm. I felt ready. I didn't respond to the eviction letter right away. Instead, I did something Madison would never expect from the woman she'd spent 11 years calling a gold digger behind cupped hands at family gatherings. I waited. Walter had explained the leverage clearly. The moment I revealed the trust and the promissory note, the entire inheritance Madison and Tyler believed was theirs would be legally not eliminated, but restructured, with me controlling the house and the company shares until I chose otherwise, and the company owing me a documented debt with interest that had compounded for 8 years. But timing mattered. Walter suggested we let them proceed with the eviction filing first, on the record, in writing, with their names on it. Let them build the case against themselves, he said. Judges remember which side acted first. So for 17 days, I said nothing. I let Madison leave voicemails about vacating in good faith. Let Tyler forward me a moving company's contact information to make this easier for everyone. I attended one final family dinner, at Madison's insistence, where she toasted 2 new beginnings, while looking directly at me over her wine glass. "I hope you find a nice apartment somewhere," she said sweetly. "Something within a nurse's budget." A few people at the table laughed. I smiled and said nothing, because I already knew what the next 30 days would bring, and I wanted her to enjoy this dinner. It would be the last one where she felt like she'd won anything. That night, I called Walter and told him it was time to file our response, formally, through the courts, with every document Robert had prepared attached as evidence. Madison had given me a deadline. Now I would give her one back. The hearing was scheduled for a gray Tuesday morning in a small probate courtroom that smelled faintly of old carpet and coffee. Madison arrived in a sharp navy suit, the kind she wore to close deals, flanked by a lawyer who looked as confident as she did. Tyler sat beside her, checking his phone until the bailiff asked everyone to rise. Their attorney opened with exactly the argument I expected, that the house and business were Robert's separate property before the marriage, that any claim I had was sentimental rather than legal, and that as adult biological children, Madison and Tyler were the rightful heirs to their father's estate. Walter waited until they finished before he stood. He didn't raise his voice. He simply opened a folder and began. Your Honor, 8 years ago, my client provided emergency capital to save Ellison Holdings from insolvency, structured as a formal loan, fully documented and notarized. He placed the promissory note in front of the judge. Madison's confident posture shifted slightly. Furthermore, Walter continued, 5 years ago, Robert Ellison executed a revised trust, placing the marital home in a controlling interest in company shares under a lifetime beneficiary arrangement in Mrs. Ellison's name. He placed the trust document down next. Tyler leaned toward Madison, whispering something urgent. Madison's lawyer picked up the promissory note, reading quickly, his confidence visibly draining with each line. The judge looked up. Counsel, were you aware of this trust prior to filing the eviction notice? Madison's lawyer hesitated. Your Honor, we were not provided. I'm asking if you conducted a title and probate search before advising your clients to file an eviction against a surviving spouse. The judge said, flatter now. Silence. Madison's confident posture had entirely disappeared. For the first time since Robert's funeral, I watched her realize that the story she'd told herself about me was about to collapse in front of a room full of strangers. The judge called a 15-minute recess before continuing. And in that quiet gap, I watched a family's version of history quietly fall apart in real time. Madison's lawyer pulled her and Tyler into a side hallway, his voice hushed but sharp enough that fragments carried back into the courtroom. You told me there was no other claim. You said the will was clean. Tyler said nothing at all. He simply stared at the floor. When court resumed, the judge reviewed the trust documents and the promissory note in full, along with Walter's timeline of the company's near collapse 8 years earlier. He confirmed the notarization was valid. The trust had never been revoked, and the loan had been formally structured with interest, meaning the company legally owed a documented debt in my name, separate from any inheritance question entirely. This court finds, the judge said, that Ellison Holdings and the marital residence are subject to a valid trust naming Diane Ellison as lifetime beneficiary. Furthermore, the estate owes a documented debt with accrued interest, which must be settled before any distribution to secondary beneficiaries can occur. Madison's lawyer asked for time to review an appeal. The judge granted it, but the ruling stood as written that day. The eviction notice was void, not reduced, not negotiated. Void, as though it had never legally existed, because in the eyes of the court, it hadn't. Outside the courthouse, Madison caught up to me on the steps, her composure finally cracking. You let us humiliate ourselves, she said, her voice trembling somewhere between anger and disbelief. You could have told us? I did tell you, I said quietly. The night I gave your father the money that saved this family's business. Nobody was listening then either. She didn't have an answer for that. For the first time in 11 years, neither did she have anything to say at all. I want to be honest about something. I didn't take everything I could have. Walter told me the court's ruling gave me grounds to remove Madison and Tyler from the trust entirely if I chose to. I didn't. Robert built that company for his children as much as for himself, even if his pride kept him from admitting how much he needed me to keep it standing. Instead, I restructured the trust with Walter's help. Keeping lifetime control of the house, Robert restored with his own hands, and converting my ownership stake in the company into a fair, permanent equity share, protected from any future attempt to remove me. Madison and Tyler kept their inheritance. They simply learned, permanently, that it existed because of a debt they'd spent years pretending wasn't real. Madison called me 2 months later. Not to apologize, not really, but to ask, quietly, why I never told them the truth sooner. I told her what I believed then, and still believe now. The truth doesn't need to be announced to be real. It only needs to be protected until the moment it matters most. I still live in that house on 4 acres outside Millbrook. Some mornings I sit on the porch Robert restored, and I think about how easily a family's version of a person can be wrong for over a decade, simply because no one bothered to ask what they assumed. People love to believe strength is loud. It rarely is. Strength is a woman who works a night shift for 15 years, quietly saves a family's future without asking for credit, and waits for the moment truth can finally defend itself. If you've ever been underestimated by people who were supposed to love you, I'd like to hear your story. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and what patience finally taught you. Stories like this remind us that quiet strength usually outlasts loud judgment. If this one meant something to you, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.